Star on the Everyday Struggle show is not as bad as I originally thought it would be. For all the people out there that keep up with like the media as far as what goes on behind the scenes, I don't know if anyone outside of the complex spectrum was aware of Star's introduction to the show Everyday Struggle. But the thing that's hilarious is just how surprising it was for me. I had no idea Star would be on the show. I had no idea he was adding something to the dynamic. I had no idea they were bringing him on. I just figured he was at most going to be featured on Everyday Struggle, like as a guest. When I clicked on it and I saw that he was going to be the permanent member of season 2, he's going to be sitting in the chair, going back at DJ Akademiks, I said, oh boy, here we go. Before I get into how I feel about Star being on Everyday Struggle, I would like to kind of explain my relationship with Everyday Struggle since it began. Like a lot of people who follow hip-hop news, I am subscribed to the individual DJ Akademiks. I don't particularly like what DJ Akademiks does. I don't like the coverage of people's personal lives, and I don't like the coverage of things that people can hold true to themselves that people who cover it could benefit from. That's why I just only cover music, only things that are released to the public. I don't really like that, but if I have to see someone do it, I'd rather it be DJ Akademiks than anyone else. So that's why I had been subscribed in the first place. Through my subscription, I found out that they were starting this show with Complex, Everyday Struggle. Joe Budden was going to be on it. I felt, wow, Joe Budden's an entertaining individual. Don't always agree with him. I think he's a little bit sporadic, but this could be an interesting dynamic. Upon watching the show, of course, in its first few episodes, it was awkward. More often than not, people were saying that they were annoyed with Joe Budden. I would say a good 70% of the audience of Everyday Struggle belonged to DJ Akademiks. I could safely say that. Seeing personalities like DJ Akademiks and Joe Budden interact is as common as seeing a solar eclipse in your lifetime. These aren't individuals that would normally be within the same setting. They're not individuals who will be within the same group or in the same party. So it's kind of forcing opposite personalities to be in a room with one another for an hour and debate something that's extremely subjective. Of course, there's going to be conflict and disagreements. That's the premise of the show. Unlike most people who watch the show, I went into it with an open mind, and I knew that there would be growth. I'm not a person who critiques something that's obviously going to become better. I could see the idea of the show. I felt what the team was going for. I knew they would become better. I knew they needed time to get everything connected, make sure they had chemistry. It's not something that you just have off rip. Audiences aren't quick to admit when they're wrong. So there were a lot of people who jumped ship and said, oh man, I hate this show. And then a couple months later, they fell in love with Joe Budden. Is this something I was expecting? No. Is it something that I'm happy about? Of course. I've always liked Joe Budden. I've always liked his music. I didn't even think he was an annoying presence on Everyday Struggle in their first few episodes. I thought he was very abrasive, and for people who aren't used to dealing with people in the real world, the way Joe was so confrontational towards DJ Akademiks probably rubbed some people who, in my opinion, don't leave the house that often the wrong way. But if you're used to dealing with anybody, I mean, a situation like Joe Budden is common. At least where I come from. Joe Budden isn't rare. I think the lack of combativeness from DJ Akademiks made Joe Budden look more aggressive than he actually was. And it took time for DJ Akademiks' introverted behavior to kind of come back out and you know, have a little bit of an outpour with that energy that Joe had. So me acknowledging that Joe Budden isn't a rarity, when I heard that he would be leaving the show Everyday Struggle, I said to myself, well, yeah, that sucked. They were finally developing that group chemistry. I mean, not only DJ Akademiks and Joe Budden, but also Nadeska. They seem to be working as a team more often. So unfortunately, Joe Budden left Complex, he left Everyday Struggle, and now we are left with DJ Akademiks and Nadeska. I tuned in yesterday out of random curiosity to see if there were new episodes of Everyday Struggle, and there actually were. I'm thinking that they're gonna have another guest on, like the DJ that they had on a couple weeks back, whose answers were really safe more often than not very entertaining, energy that didn't really oppose DJ Akademiks as much as the show probably needed for them to have an interesting debate or discussion about hip-hop. So coming in, I really didn't know what to expect. What do I see when I get in? Star. Now, the minute I see Star's face, I know that something entertaining is about to come my way. I'd recommend anyone who isn't aware of Star's catalog and his massive history in the radio industry. Go do some research on this individual because he's extremely controversial. He was back then. I really don't expect him to be that much different now. The father of trolling he refers to himself as, I could agree with that. Upon watching the show, I can see that there is a huge dynamic that has changed, all right? DJ Akademiks seems a lot more confident, seems a lot more comfortable, a lot less introverted. But do I expect him to go in dominating Star? Of course not. So let's get to the point of this video. Is Star a good co-host? Like Joe Budden, I feel everything tells with time. You have to give them an opportunity to grow. You have to give them an opportunity for their chemistry to develop, just like Joe's did. People are into the doomsday theory, which I refer to as a condition where people believe the world is going to end because there's a massive change that's made. They just don't give themselves enough time to adapt to that change. So when I look at it, I'm always wondering, I hit myself way too hard in the chest. When I look at it, I picture if Star were to have been the first person on Everyday Struggle as opposed to Joe Budden, people I feel would have the same response. Biggest difference that I see going into the show between Joe Budden and Star is, for one, Joe Budden was an artist and DJ Akademiks is a consumer. They're speaking from two different perspectives. Joe Budden has bias against record labels and against certain musicians and against certain things that happen within the culture. DJ Akademiks is an outsider purchasing and consuming the music like me, like you, just theorizing and seeing what information they can come up with from the outside. So we had two different perspectives colliding, two different perspectives that you could tell were passionate about the culture that they are talking about. But here's the thing about Star that's different from either of those two. The thing about Star is he makes it clear or makes it certain that he's a fan of no one. And his biggest thing, especially within the first few episodes, is objectivity. Within that first episode, we see exactly where Star is trying to go. In the second episode, Star basically says that I wasn't really having fun in the first episode, that the reason he was so much more aggressive and at DJ Akademiks' throat like Chloroseptic was because of a comment DJ Akademiks made prior to them shooting the first episode. The only issue I had with his comment on that was that wasn't a good enough reason to be as aggressive or as confrontational as he was being, like sometimes unnecessarily so. And some people argued that he was just trying to be another Joe Budden. Some people argued that he was just trying to make Akademiks look weak. I don't think it was either of those two. I think Star is an individual who isn't about the music, he isn't about the culture, and he is objective in the sense that he doesn't remain a fan of anyone. I believe the first episode was more of a power move against DJ Akademiks to say to the audience that at the end of the day, if you don't know about me, just know I can wipe the floor with this kid at any minute. I don't think it was about being offended or being put on guard by anything DJ Akademiks had to say prior to them shooting the first episode. I don't think it's about trying to be another Joe Budden. I think Star positioned himself within the show to say, I have value and this is why. But he's not going to be this way every single episode. Do I think he proved that value in every aspect? Of course not. You need time to develop that mentality. You need time to see what these people's values are as the chemistry builds, as the show progresses. You need time for all of that. So was I expecting Star's first appearance on the show to be a smash? Absolutely not. Star, if anything, in my opinion, is going to add a dynamic to the show that I would have liked. The only difference about Star is I feel like he's trying so hard to be objective and trying so hard to come across as if he has no biases, that he comes across more often than not as if he doesn't actually care about what they're talking about. It seems as though he's trying really hard to keep himself from putting his foot in his mouth, something that Joe Budden and DJ Akademiks fell victim to multiple times within the show's lifespan. I don't even think a show with Star is likely to break an hour. I would be surprised if it would. The reason I say that is because Star is so much more direct and so much more to the point than Joe Budden was. I don't really see him wasting time to go over a topic that they've already shut down or one that he's already pretty much proved his opinion on. He's more likely to give up before he tries to convince Akademiks of what he's trying to say. When it comes to trying to get Akademiks to admit something, I feel that's when he goes a little bit harder. Things I believe that could hold Everyday Struggle from progressing as far as being a fan of Star is the fact that he admits that he's not a fan of hip-hop, so that apparently that makes his sense of objectivity much greater than DJ Akademiks or anyone else who could probably come on the show. And someone not being a fan of hip-hop isn't indicative of them having no knowledge of hip-hop. Star is, of course, an individual who is a student of hip-hop. He doesn't necessarily have to like hip-hop to know about hip-hop. If anything, you could argue the people who don't like hip-hop and know a lot about it have the capability of being the most objective about it. I think one of the things that was so happy or healthy about the dynamic between Joe and Ak was you could see that they both had a love for what they were talking about. And even though they argued and even though they went overboard from time to time, you can tell they were both fully invested and interested into what they were talking about. Star, on the other hand, makes himself seem so objective that he kind of oozes this lack of interest, this lack of energy, this lack of empathy, this lack of understanding, as if he could easily be doing something somewhere else, which could be very true. The reason Everyday Struggle may be struggling in the future is if Complex decides that they want to censor Star in any way, that censorship is going to be so obvious to the audience, us knowing the type of individual that he is prior to Everyday Struggle and after his first couple of episodes with the show. At this point, if they put a filter on him or if they censored him in any way, it would be too obvious to the show that he was trying too hard. Star seemed to be trying so hard to be disagreeable. He seemed to be trying so hard to be the one that was against the grain, the one that wasn't with the popular opinion. See, with Joe, the difference was it felt like his energy was just authentic. It felt like his energy was a part of him. There were moments where he didn't go against popular opinion, and there were moments where he stuck with it. I believe Star's energy is just one that is so much more direct and to the point that they really aren't going to have that much time to go into the intricate details of what they're speaking of. The difference between Star and Joe, though, is even though Joe was a disagreeable character, he seemed to be genuine about his feelings disagreeing and still passionate about it at the same time. Star, on the other hand, has such a huge lack of interest in the topics that they may be discussing and is already a disagreeable personality that he comes across as really smug and arrogant when he's going back at DJ Akademiks. I mean, look at this dude's face. He is waiting for DJ Akademiks to say something that he could bury him with. This is the face of a smug individual. And we've all had the face before, but to have it so consistently in 57 minutes, that's rare. Some elements of the show that I do think that Star might be able to add that Joe Budden and DJ Akademiks didn't have as a group or like as a dynamic before is Star's lack of interest could work for the show. I think Star's lack of interest could help filter some of the BS that gets filtered through the show non-stop, coddling certain behavior. A prime example of this is showcasing the 3-hour conversation that XXXTentacion and DJ Akademiks had on his live stream. I like one of Star's comments about, "I'm not anyone's friend. I don't want to sit here and talk to an artist for 3 hours." And I wholeheartedly agree with him. I feel artists who generally do that have a bit of a liking towards the person they're speaking to. And there's nothing wrong with that, okay? I want people to be liked, but I want there to be a sense of objectivity here, like asking some deeper questions, asking some harder hitting questions, asking some questions that the artist may not be comfortable with, things that they may have to confront live on the air or in a live stream or on a Skype call, whatever you want to call it. I feel these artists are so much more comfortable going to DJ Akademiks for interviews or for explaining their situations or saying certain things is because they know he's going to entertain it. I feel some artists were uncomfortable going up to Everyday Struggle because Joe Budden was there. I felt that if they could speak alone with DJ Akademiks, they felt that the dynamic of the interview will go in their favor a little bit more because DJ Akademiks appears to be a little bit more naive, a little bit more willing to accept information without a fight. I think Star's presence on the show will make artists a little bit more defensive. I think Star's presence on the show will make artists a little bit more considerate of the things that they say before they come out of their mouth. Akademiks can be easily influenced, in my opinion, which is why X calls him on a live stream for 3 hours, or the producer 40 calls him to explain a situation, or any of these other young rappers. I feel they go to Ak because they think their ideology is going to have an easier time being represented or accepted by Ak himself or even his audience. I mean, after all, there isn't someone who's going to openly say I'm better than Tupac to an individual they know is passionate enough to argue them back down. XXXTentacion would never say I'm better than Tupac to Star, to Joe Budden, to Charlamagne the God, to Funk Flex, to anyone he knew was within the culture for a long time and who would put up a good fight against why he felt that way. Now, do I think Star and DJ Akademiks are going to be able to develop this group dynamic to the next level? Do I think they're going to progress the show? Do I think they're going to be 10 times better than Joe and Ak were? I do think that they're going to improve. That's why I'm not easy to critique things that I know are going to get better. You know, this isn't an album. Once an album is released, there is no growth from it. You know, it's released. The ideologies are going to be the same when you listen to it the first time as they are the second, the third, the fourth, and the fifth. They might hit you in a different way, but the content of the album is going to be there regardless. This is a show that's meant to develop. It's meant to grow. It's meant to expand and continue. Do I know people's behavior is so fickle to the point where they're having a problem and disagreeing with Star now, and in a few months I think they'll be all over him? Of course. I think that is a definite possibility. I expect it. Me knowing Star's history, I think there's room for far more controversy, far more points of interest. I believe we'll see a change in Star, and I believe we'll see a change in Akademiks, and I believe we're gonna just see a change in the show. But with everything, it gets better with time. I mean, most things. And do I expect this to be the same way? Yes. And that's just how I'm feeling about it. Been Shawn C. I'll see you guys next time, and I'm out. Peace.